The code I'm writing is just English. It's not software, computer languages, which I still read, but I'm not typing those words. I instruct the AI to do that. And in combination with the skills that we've created, empower it to do a good job. Welcome to AI for Your Business with Modern Logic, where we talk about how to put AI and technology to work for real companies. I'm Andy Ron, and with me is Dustin Brusnak. Today, Dustin and I talk about Sam Altman, the leader of OpenAI, one of the world's most valuable companies, and a really interesting article from the New Yorker that asks, can he be trusted? And also, we go deep into how AI has affected our own company and give you a little inside baseball on some of the techniques and strategies you can use to get more out of your employees by leveraging AI and still get outstanding quality results. I think it was a really great conversation. But before we jump in, if you're thinking about how AI could apply to your business, we'd love to help. You can schedule a free 30-minute working session with us right now at molo.now. That's MOLO.NOW in your browser. All right, let's get to it. I thought I'd lead off with this huge expose piece that came out in the New Yorker about Sam Altman. As maybe in some ways not surprising, but also is very in-depth. It's an article worth reading. Check the link in the show notes if you want to read it yourself. But essentially, yeah, they spent like over a year, dozens of interviews talking to Sam to really understand how he thinks. And that opening question, can he be trusted, question mark, you know, the old adage.
Yeah, first of all, Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI.
Right.
He's a divisive figure. Before OpenAI, he was the chairman. There's some questions about whether he really was the chairman of Y Combinator, which is a really famous like startup incubator. And there was this moment in his history where he was fired from OpenAI very briefly, and we can talk about that.
Yeah.
But just contextually, that's who he is. But what struck me about the article is it starts with this AI art. They had a really famous artist use a model, and it's a picture of Sam Altman's face, and then with all these masks floating around him and going over, like he's got a different mask for different people. So why is there so much? Why are people focusing on Sam so much? What's the deal?
Because basically they're saying there's a leadership crisis at OpenAI, and you could even go back to the time he was let go by the board as a symptom of that from then, and it caused such a rupture in the whole tech ecosystem that Sam was able to claw his way back in. But I don't think that means all is happy and fine there. There's still a huge trust issue, and it stems from the top. And it's coming from people who work with Sam directly, who are saying that it's a truthfulness, can you believe what he's saying problem. And also the original concept for OpenAI was that this was a company that was going to research AI, quote unquote, for good, because the party line at the time was, as I recall, is all of the big innovation in the large language models was coming from closed source things like Google and Facebook. And the fear was the rest of the world would be left behind, and those companies would own that technology and would have too much leverage over the rest of the world and could do whatever they wanted with it. But it turns out that was never the actual goal from the leadership. And there are notes from people involved going back to 2017 saying that's not true. And in fact, now
the name OpenAI implies.
Yeah, it's not open at all.
Right?
And they're really becoming a for-profit juggernaut now. And the other thing is they are burning cash like crazy. It does feel like what they're trying to do is get us all hooked on this drug they're pushing so they can jack the prices up once we can't live without it.
And I think we use Anthropic, and the CEO of Anthropic, Dari Amade, the word on the street is that he's a much more trustworthy figure than Sam, and they're charging something like 5 times more per token. And also the rumor is that they're still not charging what they should be for the compute that they're doing. And I was watching a podcast interview with him, and he talked about how he expects to be spending something like $1 trillion a year on compute by 2030. And that's
Yeah.
just mind blowing.
And it's impacting all of us in so many ways. Apple's having to delay the launch of new lines of computers because they can't source the memory to put in new laptops. So the ripple effects are huge, let alone how do you plan for this? And Dustin, we talk about AI every week, and part of me just has to trust that it's going to work out, that these amazing technologies we have in our hands today will continue to be available and not at a ridiculous cost increase in the future. And I'm fairly certain that's true, just based on some of the other innovations we've seen where once a model's been out for a while, they find ways to deliver the same level of performance for considerably less electricity. There's people building model runtimes on hardware. So I think hopefully the level of technology we're at today won't get more expensive, but the future levels may be more expensive. And I think one of the things we're going to talk about in a little bit is how has work changed. And certainly agentic is a new hotness. And it's much more expensive than just having a conversation on ChatGPT.
Yeah, so back to the Altman article a little bit. Like, why people say he's untrustworthy. I'd read that a big part of why he got fired was that his CTO at the time, Ilya Sutskever, I might be slaughtering that, one of the premier AI researchers in the world, basically lobbied the board to fire him. And
yeah,
his whole point was that there's no specific thing that Sam did. It was an opus or like a collection of things, but he convinced the board to fire the guy. So what's the background there? Like, why is he so untrustworthy? What's the
they found 70 pages of internal memos, over hundreds of pages of private notes, and what the journalist found was consistently people categorize what Sam was saying as outright lying. And I understand, as a visionary of a company who's building technology that doesn't yet exist, there's what you believe will happen and believing in it and talking for the future. And then there's saying you've done things when they haven't yet been done. For example, falsely stating that there was a safety review on GPT-4 Turbo and talking to the general counsel. No one can find, it doesn't know where that claim came from. Did that actually happen? And that would be a huge red flag if they are saying, hey, these things have been tested and have passed certain bars for safety abuse, when in fact they hadn't. So I think that's
I think there's an element of, when you're a visionary, you do future building a lot because you have to build what things are going to look like and then sell that to your employees because you're delivering on a mission. And there's a big difference between that and telling different people different things. And my understanding is he did a lot of that too. And even when you look back at Y Combinator that he was in control of, apparently he falsely claimed to be the chairman, but wasn't really the chairman, but no one's really sure if he was the chairman or not. And reading just between the lines, they soft fired him, asked him to leave. And he somehow spun that into a self-aggrandizing story. And for me, I meet people all the time who, when you go out and you talk to people and you do public speaking, they talk about building your own brand. And one of the things with building your own brand is, you're definitely not going to highlight the worst parts of your career as part of your brand, but where's the line? So why does this matter, I guess? Why are we gossiping about Sam Altman versus just rolling on and using the models?
If this was just like a tire shop on the corner, no one would care. Even if it was like a regionally important business, gutters are us. We clean all the gutters in Minnesota and the tri-state area. But the fact is, OpenAI is a global company, and it's at the forefront of where technology is going. And in fact, if you even look at economic questions like, are we in a recession? Are we headed for one right now? And they'll say no. But the only sector in technology that is propping up that is AI right now.
Yeah.
And so when you have a leader of one of the most important things that's holding our economy together and that everyone has pinned their hopes on for the future of the economy, it matters a lot. And it becomes involved with global politics. OpenAI as a company is not just dealing with companies in the US or just with the US government, but dealing with governments across the world. And if you're questioning, can they be trusted? And here, that's my brain starts to just buzz. And then you look at how the technology is being used and deployed, and we don't like to talk about the dark side of AI here because we're optimists. But the fact is, there have been like some wrongful death suits levied against ChatGPT, which is a product from OpenAI, Sam's company. The AI technologies are being used in military operations. We don't know how and how well supervised they are by humans, because we talk about, to get things right, you need human in the loop. But I can understand the temptation in a military situation where time is critical. You may not be able to do that. And are we headed towards a situation where military decisions are made by these closed sourced, untested AI technologies?
A few episodes ago, we talked about the Anthropic snit with the U.S. military, and last episode, we talked about Mythos and the security implications of Mythos, I think.
Honestly, I want to talk about the Anthropic snip with the U.S. government, because that was before the war with Iran. And now we're looking at how the operations for that were done. It involved Claude a ton. And so I'm guessing the whole snit came out because the U.S. government was trying to get in line paperwork so that they wouldn't get sued by Anthropic for using it that way. And that's when Anthropic was like, holy, you're using this for what?
What? They were shocked. And I think the other bit of news there that I heard recently is that since the Mythos launch on site, which is a major jump forward for AI and cybersecurity, the government has soft walked back that hard line because they need access to Mythos because of the security implications. And so you have 3-letter agencies basically saying, no, we need this. We can't have this be banned, which I think directly contradicts them labeling Anthropic as a supplier of concern from a security standpoint. Now they're saying the exact we need it for security. Which is it, guys? I think it's politics, right? It's negotiation and politics. And when you're operating at a level where you have 2 or 3 companies, why do we never hear about Google's models in these conversations? But it's always Anthropic and ChatGPT. But Google's got a heck of a model in Gemini, and they're just quietly under the surface raking in the dollars, right?
Google is a more seasoned company. I suspect they have better control over their messaging, so they're not always flash in the pan. But
and they don't
Gemini's
need to. They don't need to charge for the tokens the way the other ones do, because they already have a big revenue stream, and they probably already have the relationships with government, the back channels and all that. Whereas these 2 new companies, if I were hiring Sam and I were a chairman, which, of this big company, like one of his mandates is to go out and make AI look good, make OpenAI look good, and maybe not lie, but definitely stand in the court of public opinion and tell the best possible story. So I wonder if someone in that role in what will soon be a $1 trillion company has to be inherently untrustworthy. Is it endemic to the job itself?
I think there's also I don't know if it's a problem. It's probably a problem, but certainly it's hard for me as a regular U.S. citizen to understand what motivates the thinking and decisions of people who are essentially ludicrously rich. And at this point, I'm sure Sam Altman's net worth is plenty. He could just retire and go hiking for the rest of his life. But what motivates a person? Is it legacy building? Is it really some kind of vision for the future that he thinks he can be the hero that saves the world? And so it's a little bit of a mystery to me to understand, why do they make the decisions they're making? What's actually motivating them? Do they believe that they are the company? Sometimes you get tied up with your own identity, with your work. So it's interesting. This article came out a week or 2 ago. There wasn't a call for his resignation as a result of it. So I think the insiders aren't surprised by what they saw. And they knew that they had something of a wild animal leading that ship, but also he's charismatic and a visionary. And on balance, they might be like, yeah, we want that, because who's going to define the future other than someone who can really think outside the box?
And he somehow masterfully handled this transition from we are a nonprofit that our bylaws require us to give this technology away into we are one of the most profitable for-profits, or one of the most valuable for-profits. I shouldn't say profitable because they're one of the most unprofitable, but we're one of the most valuable
Well, if you
for-profits in the world.
bringing
But
in
when you're
money,
judging a CEO, the market judges a CEO, the investors judge a CEO by
yeah,
valuations.
yeah,
And I think if you look at Dario and you look at Altman, just on the valuation increase, they are the most successful CEOs in history. Now, I don't know that you can really attribute that to them. You can attribute that to the technology, but just from a let's look at the hard numbers and how CEOs get judged, it's hard to look at a company that 3 years ago was worth nothing or very little and is now has I think the last valuation was $800 billion. They
unreal.
have built an Apple-sized valuation. It took Apple, what, 2-3 decades to get there.
Hmm.
And they did that in 2 to 3 years. And so I think what you can see is you can see a pretty untrustworthy guy sitting in that seat that no one wants to mess with that alchemy. Like that buys you a lot of grace from your real bosses, which is the market and the
Hmm.
investors. And as long as it continues to, as long as he doesn't get a big black eye from a market dip standpoint, it's going to
That
be
is
hard.
honestly, if anything unseats him, I think it's going to be when there's a correction in how much these AI companies are valued. 'Cause it just seems like they must be overvalued right now. That the perceived loss of revenue could be blamed on him.
It really depends on if they're right about how much of compute they can own. Because if they can own, so this is a bit of an aside. Dario talks about the center of geniuses, and the idea is they're going to put all these people in one. That the AI will be on tap genius that you can turn on at any time, right? Like you connect to a website and be like, okay, but it's all automated. I want to pay for my genius to do medical work. If they can get to that point, which I don't know that they can, but if they could, I think they're right. I think they own the vast majority of compute. Now, if they can't get there, they're wrong and the bubble will pop. But I think we're going to fall somewhere in the middle. And we're already seeing such improvements to our workflows and so on that I think they could probably sit still on the technology for two and still grow massively over the next 2 to 3 years based on how it already is impacting the way we work.
Hmm.
So I want to get into that as the main point of the
All
podcast
right,
because
but
one of the things that we're
hang on.
seeing.
But first, can I take a quick
Okay,
pause?
sure. We've got a commercial break.
It's not all that. No, a quick pause for a second. If you're listening to this and thinking this could apply to my business, the best next step for you is to call us up. We offer a free 30-minute working session where we'll look at your situation in your business and help you map out exactly where AI can help. You can book that right now at molo.now. It's a new website we just put together. That's molo.now in your browser. And you can talk to me and or Dustin about your business needs. All right, let's get back to it. What were you about to say,
Yeah.
Dustin?
So I was going to say, great, no notes, but yeah, it's not a. I should point out, it's not a sales call. We genuinely want to help people with the technology, and I'm having so much fun with all the different sort of things people are bringing me that AI, that computers couldn't solve before, that we can solve now.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like being a kid in a candy store from a technology standpoint. And I'm detecting some of that from you all when you approach the business of software engineering. And I'm just flabbergasted by the amount of change that we've seen. I think our business has changed more maybe in the last 2 to 3 weeks, and certainly the last 2 to 3 months, than it has in the previous 15 years. And we're doing things so dramatically differently now. So maybe
Yeah.
let's set this up by talking a little bit about what did coding look like maybe when we had a little bit of AI, maybe in 20, maybe mid last year. And what does your day look like now? What for a senior engineer like you who's been doing this for 20 plus years, you're incredibly competent. You're one of the most competent engineers like I've ever met. What does this look like for you?
It's a revolution. Certainly, if we roll back to say last year, we were using before Cursor, before Claude Code, we were using Visual Studio Code. It's just a text editor. Code is always text, so it's kind of like a word processor, but you don't have bold and all that. It's just words. And I would spend most of my time typing the words for code down. And we would have a lot of meetings to discuss what do we need things to do, but then it would be on me to figure out how do I want to approach solving this problem, organizing the files involved, figuring out an algorithm, maybe doing some reading in a book, like a coding patterns book. There are various recipes books you could find their standard patterns, but after you do this job for a while, you know the patterns you like. And early AI was a good resource. You might not have to go to Google to find how do I use this API? How do I run this particular function? What's this specific pattern? You could start to lean on the Copilot, the built-in AI from Microsoft, to answer some of those questions. But still, by and large, I would be writing the code. And there was some ability to ask it to write code for you, but it was pretty laughable. Like it would get confused. It would put in a pattern,
variables,
but it wouldn't actually connect it to things. It wouldn't compile. And there was no iterative improvement. You would just be like, eye roll, fix it.
You got it wrong, fix it. Yeah, and what strikes me about so I coded, I think I'm 8 years out from having done anything really meaningful.
Yeah, probably.
You guys kicked me off I like to joke, you guys kicked me off the bus.
I think you jumped off the bus. You maybe
I did. The reality is I jumped off the bus. I was ready to do something else. And we needed someone in the role. So I was like, I will go do that. But the reason was because I used to tell people, like, our designer, our UX guy can design something in 5 minutes that takes a month to implement. There were points where I would wake up in the day and I'd look at what I had to do. And it's like, I have to add a button to the screen that adds something to a shopping cart. And then it's fast forward 12 hours later, it's 7, 8 p.m. I haven't even gotten to the button because I sat down and the architecture was wrong, and I found a bug in the database, and my deployment environment wasn't set up correctly for this, and something just randomly went, and now I've spent 12 hours. And from a user standpoint, a shopping cart button, add to shopping cart, that's an easy thing, but it could be weeks of work. It could be a minute of work. We never even really knew, because even with the amount of skill we had, it was just, and computers are so pedantic. They require so much. Just every little minute detail needs to be explored. And it was even things we'd done before would sometimes border on R&D.
And I think you're emphasizing one of the key points about the old existence, which was for the team building up software product, coding was the hardest part, because at any point, one of your developers might lose an entire day to just what you described. There was this unknown rat's nest and had to solve it.
And we got incredibly good at shipping on time, but this is why you hear about like software overruns at big companies, and like governments are always, no software project's gone right. Something like 80% of them fail. Mm-hmm. We got very good at shipping on time. And the way we did that is not by coding faster. It was by shipping less, because that was really the only knob that we had was, okay, we can control scope, and your deadline is more important than this extra bell and whistle. So we're going to put that on your nice.
It's a communication and process skill to talk to the customer and be like, you don't really need all these things. Here's a way to solve your business case and do it faster. And that is how we get on time and hit your budget. And we could have that hard conversation early enough and get our customers on board. And that's how we would deliver on time.
And we spent a decade developing that skill, and we got really good at it. And I think I argue we were at Adobe, and we had to put back when they put discs and boxes on shelves. And if you missed the buying season, your quarterly stock tanks. And so we got, even before being at Modern Logic, we got very good at being like, it doesn't matter. It's literally going onto a physical disc and it's going somewhere. It's going on a CD. It needs to be done better than it needs to be. And I think that's when I was starting Modern Logic, it was like, this is the skill that a lot of software developers don't have. But let's fast forward now to, okay, you've got some of these coding tools. They're writing some code. You're spending, I think Dylan told me one time, he didn't know whether they were actually buying him time. I'm spending as much of my time correcting it as I am writing it. And the funny thing about that is when you hire a new engineer, you have a similar kind of conversation, right? Like these things were already operating at the level of an entry level or a junior engineer, because So yeah, I could do this code myself, but you can't, because then the junior engineers
You're raising a couple interesting points there. One is, I think, just to step back, there is a schism amongst even my peers and friends about whether this AI coding stuff is any good and worthwhile. Certainly some people have concerns about energy use and these other things. And if I take that out of the mix, because in some ways I've resolved myself to this is happening, you have to stay abreast of these things or you'll just be left behind. But in even taking that out, there are some valid criticisms of, you're right, like it makes sometimes like junior mistakes. And I'm sure a critic might be like, why am I putting up with this? I could do it better myself. And the key for us is the place I have to invest my brain power is to enable the AI to do as good a job as I could. For example, there's this thing called skills, and they're just basically like recipes for the AI. When it needs to do a certain kind of task, it will identify, hey, I'm doing this kind of thing, and it will look in the skills directory and find a recipe for how to do that correctly. And then it will know to, oh, don't forget to do this kind of a thing. So the common mistakes it makes, there will be, hey, notes, don't do this. This is the right way to do that. Don't forget to put the yeast in your bread, right? Might be an easy thing to do as a baker, but if you forget it, it's not going to turn out. It's kind of the same thing for writing code.
At the end of the day, they're still computers. They still need to follow.
Well, they are, like, and yet the instructions with AI can now just be English language. But the other thing skills can have is little scripts and programs, so that instead of the AI having to take in the whole task into its kind of virtual mind all at once, and that could be like a number of tokens it needs to process, it can delegate to a script to do some of that thinking. Because sometimes the thinking it needs to do is very algorithmic, and actually could write a little helper program to do that. And then that helper program is not AI, it's regular code. So it's very deterministic. It does a good job of that little task. But another thing you can do is have skills basically tell it, spin off another AI called an agent, and it'll work on the background to do a thing and come back. And that also helps the primary AI stay focused on the task at hand and delegate some of these kind of side missions to a different pool of tokens. And then that is done, and that's not polluting the primary AI's focus, because it does have a limited attention span.
It's got a million token context window, but the reality is there's a ton of research that as that context window fills up, right? And a token is roughly equated to a word.
Right.
As you get up 50, 60, 70%, the validity of the results go down. And so a lot of what we do is manage that window and manage the scope so it doesn't have so much in it. It's I think a layman's description of this for me would be, it's like you ever go grocery shopping, but you have a big meeting coming up and you had a bill maybe you had an argument with your wife and you got a bill somewhere, and you get out of the grocery store and 3/4 of the things you wanted to buy aren't in the cart, and like you have some random stuff because you weren't really there grocery shopping. And in a similar way, these AIs, if you give them too much background, they're not really there trying to solve this one little problem you've asked it to solve. They're looking at everything you've talked about, and all that's in its head. And so we were talking about you using AI as an autocomplete, right? Yeah. And you skip forward to skills a little bit, and I think that's a flash of the future. But what happened around like December, January, and what is the work? You sit down and you write code for 6 hours a day.
Oh yeah, we don't do that anymore.
Like now, and what changed?
Yeah, sorry, I did gloss over that. Went right to skills. The big thing is now what I'm saying, the code I'm writing is just English. It's very rarely software computer languages, which I still read, but I'm not typing those words. I instruct the AI to do that. And in combination with the skills that we've created and other ways we help empower it to do a good job, the AI is able to, just a full stack developer could, on my like application platform, build new APIs, document them, unit test them, deploy them locally, update type files, build the front end, add tests through Playwright, verify those.
So it basically does your entire job. It does. So you're not working. You're not working anymore. We should stop paying you. That's what I'm hearing as a CEO.
So it's accelerating the coding so that with 15 minutes of me writing a good prompt, and actually there's a plan mode. That's the other key innovation the last few months is the first conversation is, this is what I want. And then it'll actually think about it and ask clarifying questions. And from that, build a plan. So it has a roadmap. I need to touch all these parts of the code base, the back end, the types, the unit tests, the front end unit tests, the end-to-end integration tests, and think about deployment changes. Is it going to affect the CDK? All of those will be in the plan. And if I think of things as we're going in plan mode, I will say, don't forget this, we need to do that. And then it's, are we ready to go? I'm like, let's go. And I can walk away for the next 20 minutes as it just churns and eats through every step in that plan. And then it's not perfect, but it's pretty amazing. Another thing we found, and I think the modern logic secret sauce is, no one of these vendors has it perfect. So then I'll take, if I have, say, Claude, the Anthropic model, doing the primary development, I'll turn around and use OpenAI's Codex to review it. And you can even have language where you say, be extremely critical, pretend you're a seasoned, curmudgeonly old software engineer who doesn't like anything new, try to poke holes in what's been done here. And then iterate, adversarial, right, have the two work it out. And then that's another way to raise that level of code quality.
And there's something really interesting there on the plan mode specifically that I think for a long time when I go and teach people, we were doing courses on prompting for a while. We don't largely do those anymore, but it was still early days. And I was teaching people to use AI. And one of the big things is if you underspecify the prompt, you get a bad result. And I think plan mode is a huge leap forward because it's helping you specify at a level that the AI needs in order to do a good job. And the other thing that I saw was really this came with, there was a Codex update, but I think of this as like when Opus 4.6 came out in December, January, that time frame, alongside Claude Cowork. There was this improvement. People talk about agentic harnesses all the time. So first of all, the model got way better, basically overnight, and unlocked this new kind of workflow. And the other thing that happened is we all collectively learned that the best way for these things to work is a loop. So it goes and it writes some code, and then it validates. And it's shocking on that first validation how much it just wrote the code. And then it's, oh, that was wrong. Why did I do that? That was brain dead. And then it goes back and it fixes it. And it's this, what's a harness is how people refer to this, or an agentic harness. And there's more to them than that. But at their very core, it's just a loop basically saying, before you send this to me and waste my time, validate and build some extra steps and do this a few times and make sure that the output matches what you were asked to do before you bring it and waste my time validating. And that little innovation combined with a massive leap forward in the models enabled us to, instead of using it as autocomplete, we basically took it and we're having it do the whole section of the job.
And actually what I'm learning is if I ever find myself actually sitting and doing anything repetitive at all, the first thing that comes to mind is, all right, why can't I get the agent to do this? So like the adversarial review built into GitHub, this online platform we use for code sharing, there's a button to have Copilot review your pull request. And it's underneath, I think, using an OpenAI model to do that, but honestly, I don't know. But it finds things that are different than the Anthropic Opus model that I used to write the code. And so I'll go back and forth adversarial wise, but it's tedious because I have to go to the web browser and hit request review, wait for it to complete, and then go back to my command line and say, hey, use the GitHub command line tool to look at feedback on your pull request and fix it. And then Claude Code will do that and it'll push up new changes. And then I have to go back to the web browser. And because another thing that I wanted to bring up, which is new for me, is I don't just work on one ticket at a time anymore. I have 2 or 3 per project that are going simultaneously. And now Dylan on my team, your brother, he's big into using Git work trees, which is, it's a little more complicated and fiddly to get to work right. I often just use Git branches, but now I have so many changes going on.
Which is a way of separating your work Oh, so
it's
it doesn't interfere with you can do it in
yeah,
the same directory and say make a virtual version of this directory, make changes and make a different one and make different changes, and then at the end
but
we're going to
it's
merge them together, right?
honestly, I'm now dealing with that age-old problem. Do you ever remember looking at someone's desktop computer? Like, even if you go back to the Macs from the 80s, they would be like, it'd be like final report 2, final report dash new, final report dash 2 dash use this one. I end up in that problem because I have all these agents working in parallel on the same code base, making competing changes. And then I am the one coordinating and merging them all back to come up with the file. No, this is the one DOC. So that in my mind is I have to figure out how to get the agent to do that for me. So there's always like, I'm at the edge, like figuring out how do I make this thing more efficient.
But I think the upshot for the business is that I'm seeing is we're actually having conversations internally about what does the world look like when the cost of production on an information technology basis is near zero. And we've seen maybe 2 orders of magnitude reduction in overall cost of coding, to your point, where it used to be that the project planning and then the coding would be the rest of 80% of the work.
Yeah.
Now it's the other way. It's largely flipped.
And we have to now talk about the whole team because we've optimized coding so much that's not the slow part anymore. It still is work. And like I said, managing the AI to do it is still work. And still, sometimes you have to actually test, and you still have to have a human reason about, is this?
It's a skill. It's a new skill.
It's a new, but it's a new skill. It grows on the skills we had, but also the rest of the team needs to be embracing these same kind of attitudes and approaches. Design can't take a week where you're in a classic design tool like Adobe Illustrator. We have to find ways to ideate and iterate faster. Project management can't be a lead or a project manager takes 2 days to think about all the notes from the meeting with the client and enter them as tickets in the backlog. That one, we actually have had great success just taking transcripts from Fathom, or you can take them from Zoom or whatever, and feeding them right into Claude Code with a skill that connects to your project management tool. We're using GitHub projects now, and puts issues in automatically. And it'll do plan mode to let you iterate. Is this the correct thing? It's amazing. All you have to do in a meeting now with me or my team is say, I need someone to, there's an action item that this feature needs to be all changed in this way so that it does this and this. And the AI will create a ticket. And what's beautiful about that is it has all the context of the conversation around it. So the tickets we create are no longer like what humans would end up doing when they're in a rush, which is a one-line description in the title and a blank description.
Change the title in that thing that that we talked about.
And which then you look at the next day and you have no idea what this means.
Yeah.
The ticket created by AI includes all the context of the conversation around it. So a developer knows exactly what screen, what needs to change, why, what the expected outcome is. Even the AI will even think about edge cases and testing. All of that will be built in. And so we are accelerating the whole process now. Yeah, go ahead.
I think Dylan was telling me he's actually working on the next step where the AI will pull his tickets and then do a plan automatically. So it's already ready for him when he gets in to just kick off the thinking mode. He just reviews the plans and then he goes and gets his cup of coffee. And so you can see a world where this pipeline, and Beth our project manager came to me the other day and she said, like, I'm actually running out of things for the developers to do. I need to spend more time giving the developer. And I can't tell you as an executive, as a person who's managed code projects for my whole career, 25 plus years, how mind blowing it is, because there has never been another point in my career. And I've worked on $100 million projects. I've worked on $10,000 projects. There has literally never been a time where the project manager came to me and said, there's nothing for the developers to do. It's always been either the developers are going to get this done, maybe, or we need more time. And it's very rare. And also, or we need to cut something, right? Like,
as a developer, we've always had to make sacrifices around, we don't have time to unit test this properly. We don't have time to localize this for accessibility. We don't have time and energy. And now I'm building into our skills and our processes. Those are table stakes. Why wouldn't you do them? Automatic. They're basically free if you ask for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And this isn't just what you're doing. Like, we're talking,
I want to turn around
coding, right?
And ask you, we've talked about development, but what about the rest of the company? Is this sea change affecting sales, marketing, leadership? How are you seeing it impact you?
Yeah, so that skill thing you talked about, where you're taking sort of the knowledge of the organization and putting it into a reusable skill that you were teaching the AI, just like you would teach a person a skill.
Hmm.
That applies to more than just writing code. And one of the people are catching on now that we're at the end of April, that really AI forward organizations are starting to realize Claude Code isn't just for code. In fact, when you look at the new Codex model, which is roughly, think about it as OpenAI's version of Claude Code, 50%, Sam Altman came out, and obviously it's Sam Altman we just talked about, but he basically said that when they look at, if we take him at his word, when they look at use cases for Codex, 50% of the workflows are not coding workflows. And I think I would imagine Claude Code is equivalent or greater, because you
Yeah.
can get this tool. And if you don't have Claude, if you've played with Cowork, Cowork is effectively a wrapper around Claude Code that's designed to make it more accessible for people like me. But if you really want to get to the power tool level, you need to go down into the terminal and open Claude Code, which isn't as hard. But if you haven't played with Cowork, that's the first thing. It's a tab
Yeah.
in Claude Desktop, but that gave that was so I got my feet wet. Cowork came out in January. I'd been out selling, talking to people, doing presentations, and my first real exposure to agentic was Cowork. And I very quickly, because I have a technical background, I was like, I need to go directly to the metal and started using Claude Code. And what my day looks like now is I literally start my day with the AI, with Claude Code open, with 3 or 4 tabs, and I will kick off. Okay, this one I want it to use my start day skill that I've built, and that goes and connects to my email, connects to my calendar, and it builds a summary of, here's the most important things you need to do today. Here's what you said you wanted to get done yesterday. And it actually will critically look at those and give commentary like, you don't have time to do this, maybe punt it to next week. And then while that's happening, I've got another thing going, crunching maybe through some of our newsletter copy, that for so we're going to be coming up with a newsletter soon, so I can review that. And I'm working on the newsletter. My day job now, when I'm sitting at my desk, is really, it's a lesson in saying, okay, how do I want this done? And how do I plan to have an AI actually deliver the work? And then there's an iterative process. It feels to me a lot like the best parts of software development, where I'm thinking, okay, this isn't quite what I want. Let's tweak the script a little bit. Let's get the writing a little bit more human. And I'm not writing any code. And the other thing that these tools do that they found out is it's really helpful that it understands code, because it can go and create a Python tool or
Yeah.
a piece of code that automates a piece of my day.
Yeah.
And I don't have to be a sophisticated coder to do it. It can build it, double check it, validate it, and just plug it right into the skill or the workflow.
Yeah.
And so I am writing software probably at a rate greater than I was when I was a full-time software developer, sitting at my desk 2 hours a day. And the real limiting factor for me is I run out of tokens, right? And that, I think we have to do some work on the cost side of the business, because I can see a world where we're spending like $5,000 in compute per employee or more per month, because it's just really, the sky is the limit. If there's something that I want, I don't immediately think I am time constrained on that thing. I think, okay, I'm going to sit down for an hour, and I'm going to get 80% of the way there in less than an hour. And the other thing about LLMs is they can do things that I could not, as a coder, possibly have done, like non-deterministic flows, like writing. So I can now use code and AI to solve a class of problem that I've wanted to solve my entire career. Things like making value judgments on which parts of my calendar can be moved.
Hmm.
And I can teach the AI about that. I would have to hire humans. I have hired humans to do that work before. And so my whole job is also changing. On the sales side, we're talking about, how do we turn our first meeting with the client into the statement of work that is the
Well,
first draft of that statement
well,
of
it
work.
sounds like what we've been doing with transcripts to Jira or GitHub issues.
Exactly. And so you can see a world where your business is massively accelerated to the point where you just have the decision makers, and you really go with this AI first approach, where you have a shared model of your business, as a set of skills and Python files, and your business is really, your computer really is a terminal that has access to a model, a written human word version of what makes your business special and how you deliver.
Yep.
And it's been taught all the skills of everyone, everything that you need to do, hundreds or 200 or thousands of skills. And your day job is coordinating the output of those things and describing new things to the system that are going to give you a compelling competitive advantage. What's cool is there was an article from one of the big think firms like McKinsey, or it wasn't McKinsey, and they were talking about how when they look at the real bleeding edge, the 1% of AI, what they're seeing is that they're not just using AI for automation. That's like table stakes now. It's how you get 20, 30% improvement. But if you want to double, if you want to, your business, it's using AI to grow the value of your business by doing either new things or by delivering what you used to do completely differently. So if you're open to that disruption, you're going to be using AI to basically replace or build on. And what we're using it for is not just for the coding, which we've done forever, but we're using it to produce podcasts. We're using it to produce newsletters. We're using it to update our website. We're using it. I'm personally using it to manage my daily tasks and calendar. Yeah. And there's no task that I can see in the future not immediately turning around and going to AI and thinking, how can we make AI better? Other than the human-to-human interface, which still matters, right?
But
I'm not going to have AI do my one-on-ones.
Helping the AI. The AI is helping that, because you talk about that sales meeting leading directly to a statement of work. I don't have to be heads down writing down all the notes I hear the customer saying anymore. I can be fully engaged them, listening, responding, ideating, creating, spitballing, and I don't have to keep track of that was a good idea, that was a bad idea. First of all, I have the full transcript afterwards. I can review word for word or listen, but I don't need to do that very often, because really that transcript I can feed right in and have it synthesized by an AI to come up with, all right, what did we finally actually land on for a decision? What were the action items? What is the shape of the thing that they want us to build?
Yeah. And the manager in me is just delighted by the fact that our unit of production is becoming the meeting. As is a joke I've been saying. We've been saying, like, for a long time, people were like, managers, all they do is have meetings. Nothing really gets done in the meetings. And now everything gets done in the meeting, and then the transcript drives the automations that do the first draft on everything, which I find it to be absolute. It tickles me deeply that now we're talking about how do we have more meaningful, data-dense meetings so that we can then get clear results out of it that we can feed to these automations. And if I should say, companies out there that aren't doing this they're in fine company with pretty much every company in the world. Like, we are on the absolute bleeding edge of this.
And we are. And I've even, while you were just talking, thought of 2 or 3 other things we're doing to help empower our teams to move faster and get better results. And I'll also have to maybe talk about that next time, because I think we're running out of steam.
We're at time. Yeah. We could talk about this topic for probably all day long. I am more excited about going to work now than I have been since I was a 20-year-old with my first software startup.
Yeah,
it just feels like we're reinventing ourselves. This technology is super fun to play with, right?
It is fun. You do have to let go of, you can't just sit in place and do what you've always done. But I've always been a person who likes the new thing and new challenges, and so it's well suited to me too. It's really interesting and fun. Okay, but anyway, thank you for joining us. If you're exploring AI or have something specific you want to solve, the best next step is to talk it through. You can schedule a free 30-minute session with Dustin or myself right now at molo.now. That's MOLO.NOW. Just type it into your browser bar. Do you have questions or a topic you want us to cover on the podcast? Let us know. You can go to modernlogic.io/podcast, where you'll find links to follow us on our other platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Our show is produced and edited by Ryan Peterson, with additional contributions from Dylan Brusnak, Anna Spitz, and Beth Davis. Our AI mascot was created by the artist Becca Ron. Our theme music is Elastic Vibe by Ziv Morin. If you find the show useful, please share it with someone who would benefit from listening to it. And also take a moment to rate and review. It helps more than you might think. Modern Logic for Your Business is a production of Modern Logic. Thanks. We'll see you next time.